Change is good. Change for the sake of change is not. Welcome to McBain Moments. Alright, as always, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Make sure you take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Change. Change is what makes the world go round. It's what makes sure that we continue to evolve over time, become better than what we already are. And that's very important. In fact, a lot of the McBain moments themselves are all about changing those things within ourselves that are no longer helpful to us. But it occurred to me as I was thinking about things, and it's something that we see a lot in both mundane and non-mundane politics, and understanding that I'm a member of an organization that simulates medieval times, and so it has its own internal politics. And I was thinking about, changes always end up coming. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're arbitrary, and sometimes it's because you have to. And so I got to thinking about, is when you change things, you should change things in such a way that you only change them as much as you absolutely have to in order to make things better. And the reason I say it that way is not because if you change it, you might change things by like 50% and it makes things 100% better. It's that because if you change things by 50% overnight, you may never see that 100% before you realize you made a mistake that causes a catastrophic problem. And then you might be below where you were to start with. And so the goal might be to change the way things work by 50%. But you need to gradually change those things over time so that you don't wind up with a catastrophic implosion. And I think there's a lot of... It's really important to think about these things when you are moving to implement any change of any sort whatsoever. And that can be in society, that can be in your own life, that can be in your job, that can be in your company if you're a business owner, and that can be in even in the way you parent your children. You might be like, oh, if I change things like this, then I know that not only will I have a better relationship with my child, they'll be better behaved, and they will react in a way that is far more beneficial to their future. But if you flip a switch and change it overnight, they aren't going to understand the change and they won't be able to cope with it, and it's going to end up being a disaster. And I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen in my own life, and I've seen it happen in other people's lives, because they're like, well, this is supposed to make everything better, and it made it so much worse. It's because you flipped a switch. Never flip a switch. It's never a switch. It's a crank. And it's a crank that you slowly have to spool up. Right? And the further you go, the faster you might be able to turn it. That's the Pareto distribution. The more you change things, the faster you can generally change things, because people will accept that change far more. They'll be far more amenable to the change if the change is gradual and slowly spools up over time, especially if things are getting gradually better. And so when making changes, you have to be very judicious about what you're changing and see what the effect of each change is before you go to implement the next step. And it might be that you implemented step B before step A, and you have to go back to and implement step A first and then re-implement step B. And this is why you should always do things in a manner that is gradual and judicious. And it's very interesting that, especially today, there are a lot of people who think that when you need to change something, you have to flip a switch and just be done with it. And it'll make everything better, and that's not the way it works. If you can't do that in your own life, there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to do it on a macro level. And name one thing that you can simply flip a switch on and not have any problems whatsoever. I'll wait. Comment below. You won't. And so it's important that, like, for me, in the last year, I have changed many things about my life. I now always have stated goals. I am building a routine. I'm working on that routine, and I have problems with the routine because at first, like most people, I tried to flip a switch. So I looked back and I said, okay, well, flipping a switch doesn't work. So how the hell do I fix this? And I looked at it and I said, I need to gradually implement things into my life so I can put my house in order. Because if you don't put your house in order, you're not going to be able to change anything else. So I need to fix me. And so I realized that, okay, so flipping the switch doesn't work, so I will gradually work on these things. And these are my 9 goals for the year. And I was impatient probably in the first 4 months of the year to get through all 9 goals. And it was sometime in May or June that I realized, wait, hold on. I set these 9 goals for a 365-day period. Why am I trying to do it in 120? That doesn't mean you procrastinate, but it allows you the time to adapt your mind to a new mode of thinking, and the new mode of thinking that you need to achieve every goal in sequence. And the minimum amount of time that is required to do that is 21 days. This was taught to me by a boss I had back when I ran convenience stores. My district manager said, 21 days makes a habit. You need to do things consistently over 21 days without exception for it to be a constant habit. And it's easy to fall out of habit. It's far easier to fall out of a habit than to fall into one. It is far easier to fall out of a habit than to fall into one. Now, once you're in one, it's far harder to break a habit than it was to fall into it in the first place. So in developing your habits, be very careful about what habits you develop. Good habits will benefit you, and bad habits will destroy you. Implement change in your life, but not for the sake of changing things. Implement it with the vision of making things better, slowly and gradually over time. That's how you put your house in order. This has been a McBain moment.